Yeah, it just brought out the word redemption. That's what reminded me.
But
So
with the black eyes, the woman with the black eyes.
Yeah, she's staring at me, and I'm in this concrete sort of chair, which is quite brittle and you wouldn't want to be. You had your head smashed against it. So she's screaming at me, and instead of me taking the recovery or the faith thing, do what? So my mannerisms changed, and this English lady says, "No, Michael, no, please." I said, "Tell her to go away. I'm sitting here. She went, no. You have to." I said, "I'm not moving." She went, "Yeah, you got to move. It's just got to move." Yeah. So it works out that the English girl says, "If you don't move, one of us will suffer really badly."
Oh,
she'll hurt one of us. So I said, "Okay." So reluctantly, the whole of the hour and a half, I can see this woman looking at me like that.
Yeah.
I felt like going, "Bosh." Anyway, towards the end, it would come to redemption. Yeah. So they say, look, we should be praying for everyone in here, and what does redemption mean? Can you be a believer? What it was all about redemption for the last 10 minutes. And as I'm sort of going to leave, this woman has got her boyfriend on her lap, and he looked like a little doll. Yeah, she was grabbing hold of him, kissing. It was nutty stuff.
Aye.
And they said, you have to be careful when you're leaving. This is in a prison.
I know. This
little Indian lady come running up to me, and she was part of the course, but she was in both camps. She's come running up to me, and as she's got near me, she went, and she blew right in my mouth. I thought, wow, what was that?
That's a spell.
I was violently sick for 4 days.
Honestly?
Violently sick for 4 days.
Whoa.
I wouldn't say violently sick. I was unwell. I was sick. I had this nauseating feeling, and that's what someone else said to me.
You got a bit of gin.
Yeah, that's what someone.
It's the Haiti. It's like voodoo, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah,
voodoo, is it? Yeah.
It weren't good.
That's like voodoo. It's just
something happened there.
Green Mile.
The Green Mile. Yeah.
Okay, let's crack on.
Right. Okay.
Right. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. 2, 3, and go. This is the Gritty Nitty podcast. I have my usual guest alongside me, sitting on the sofas as per usual. My name's Tosca Jackson, and I'm here, and I'm kind of oiling the wheels, making it go along, maybe not make. Let's call me the conductor. Let's just call me the conductor, and they are the musicians. They're the people that make it all sing, and in perfect harmony sometimes, and sometimes not in perfect harmony. But they're definitely here. To my left, I have young Michael Emmett.
I like the
young Michael Emmett. He of the parish of London. Michael, could you tell the people out there in podcast land exactly who and what it is you are?
What am I? I have to ask myself that question every day. What am I? So I suppose, what am I? What am I doing here, did you say?
Yeah. What are you doing here? What are you? What are you about? Sunday morning.
What am I doing here? Is
what comes to mind?
Well, I sort of really enjoy coming here, actually.
Right, okay.
I like this. So who am I? I suppose if we could use I am me,
okay.
To I am me to I am today, to I am me who I used to be. So what I used to be, I was entrenched with criminal activities for probably a big chunk of my life. And I think it's a mindset, it's an action, you respond to an action, whether it's in kindness, love, or in darkness. And I was responding to the darkness that was permeating around my life, and it was about greed, it was about self-importance, it was about look at me, and really that's not the true value of a criminal. Yeah, because the true value of a criminal should be, because you're at it, you're up to no good, is keep your mouth shut, go quietly, and my dad was like that, so was Arthur, they was old school. But I think when you're an addict, and like, which I am, I'm a recovering addict, is you always want more. There was never enough. And I think the bottom line to answer that, I was in a court with my dad, sitting in the courtroom, arrested for a huge amount of cannabis, And my dad...
Were you addicted to cannabis?
I was addicted to everything. I was addicted to... I used to love a puff. Was I addicted to it? Yeah, it was part of my addiction. But I was addicted to dishonest sex.
Right.
I was addicted to dishonest money. Everything about me was dishonest. So I would say my addiction was addiction to dishonest. I found it extremely exciting. I found it extremely uncomfortable. So it was that equilibrium, that high and low, that sort of was the conduit of who I was, really. And so when I was sitting next to my dad, next door to him, it was 14 of us in the jury box. He took, and I'm going to have to swear, but I won't make it a bad swear word.
That's good. We don't like bad swear words.
Shall I go bleep?
Yeah.
So he whispered in my ear, "You greedy bastard," and I looked at him like that. And what he was saying to me was my sort of greed for money took us to that place that was sort of irreparable. But my opinion was, here, drop me out. You've got away with it for far too long. This is the consequences of us being nicked. But it was that I wouldn't stop. 1 ton, 5 ton, 10 ton, this. And I don't know what it meant, yeah. But it was like, that wanting and getting. And when you get it, you don't want it. So it's the excitement. So it sort of drilled my life. And there's a lot of lonely times that come with that, because you're sitting in a prison cell earning about 14 quid a week for cleaning the toilets, and it don't exist anymore. But we're creatures of habit, and we seem to sort of aspire to where we are. So in prison, I think for me, it was a learning curve to realise, as much as I tried to get on with everybody, I didn't get on with Michael. And I had to live with that constant anxiety, fear, to impress. Do you know who I am? And I weren't anybody. And this was the turning point for me, yeah? I was sitting in my cell, and I suppose because I was down in sort of, it was a bit of a hick place, wasn't it? Exeter back in the 90s. And it's like, oh yeah, look at these drug smugglers. So it comes with a little bit of notoriety, a little bit of celebrity status. And so you live in that for a minute, and that's short-lived. But I was in my cell, and I was with 2 young guys smoking a joint, yeah? And, all nonsense. And this guy come up to my cell door, and he'd been away for 22 years. And he was 20 years clean and sober from drinking drugs, and he went. He was chatting away to me. I can see him standing there now, and I hope this answers your question. And he turned around and said to me, "You all right, mate?" I said, "Yeah, how you doing?" I'm all like, I was looking at him like that stone, waiting to be banged up. He said to me, "Michael," he said, "there's only one person in this jail who you got to get on with." So the ego, well, I ain't frightened of no one, you know, all nonsense. I was frightened of everyone. I was frightened of myself. And he said to me, "There's only one person you got to get in." So I assumed he meant it was a prison officer, or it was a prison. And I said, "Well, who's that then?" And he said, "It's yourself." Good night, Michael. And it was like a moment that had to happen. It was predestined, this moment. And as that door closed, I remember looking at my dad, who was a drug import. He was in the importation game for years, but never participated in using. It was a commodity to him. It could have been potatoes, as long as it was earning money. And I've got him smoking skunk to sort of equate the situation, because I want to get high. And he's sitting there, and he's high, and he's doing his painting, and he thought he was Picasso, bless him. And I sat there, and I thought, I don't get on with me. So what does that mean to me? How can I get on with Michael? And I really got out of it, and stoned and frightened. And it was sort of one of the things that pushed me into the recovery of Michael. And it was a spiritual thing for me. And I wanted to change. And so I'm here today. That was 23 years. No, it's longer than that ago. I'm talking about it's 29 years ago. And so, yeah, and I'm here today to give a message. I love being here. The Gritty Nitty show, I think it's fantastic. And, yeah, that's me, Tosca. Thank you.
Michael, along with Mark and Paul, has written a book. I haven't written a book, which I apologise for that. And I did start last week, and I've got 9 words down. I think.
Have you?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a blockbuster.
On you go, my son.
What were the 9 words? I need to write a book.
No, I couldn't possibly tell you that. You might nick my idea. Because this is going to be better than all of yours put together, obviously. So, along with Mark and Paul, you've written a book. Could you let the people out there know what this book is and what's available? And
yeah, well, it's available in bookshops, I believe. I think the best way to buy books today is online, isn't it? So Amazon seems to be, but it's in Christian books as well. It's in Christian, sort of on Christian sites as well. So I wrote a book called Sins of Fathers, and the reason I wrote it and named it that, because I was in the church one day listening to a very wise man called Sandy Miller. He's a very wise man of God. And he started talking about, and I won't put it in a biblical term, but it was the sins of the forefathers. But for us to understand it, it was repeating behaviours or being like my grandfather and my dad. And it made sense to me when he said this, because I'd repeated what my dad had done and what my grandfather had done, and I wasn't shown the repeated behaviour. It was in me. And then he spoke about the blessing of the future generations to come, and it really touched me. And I thought, well, if I can change myself, then hopefully the Bible says that the next generations of my family will be different. And I didn't want my kids or my grandchildren to feel the pain that I felt. But although it's been painful, what I've received from changing that pain is freedom in lots of areas of my life. So I've tried to generate that through the book. I was a criminal. I'm not religious. I really want to stress that I'm not religious. It's a spiritual thing for me. So I've sort of impregnated that in the book, the good and the bad, the yin and the yang, whatever that means to anyone in their dialogues. And it's about, the change from being a stinking rotten sort of, no, I won't say I was stinking rotten, that's not a way, well, I was, I think, but I suppose it's about changing the game plan of my life. I express that. It's a bit of a crazy story, like we've all got. And it's doing quite well, actually. It's a book for prisons. It's a book for recovery. And it's quite a funny old story. And I suppose when I read it, it enables me to realise how far I've come. Yeah. It's not been an easy journey. So that's my book, Sins of Fathers, published by HarperCollins.
Fantastic. And moving swiftly on, sitting diagonally to me, is Mark Dempster. Mark, where are we at today?
Okay, where we are, right, so where are we at? I'm enjoying right now being here and with you guys and with Paul and Michael and yourself, Tosca. It's funny, I watch myself when like Michael's...
I'm going to stop you now.
Yeah,
I'm going to stop you.
okay.
What I'm going to say is I want you to introduce yourself.
Right, okay, so my name is Mark Dempster. I'm, so now my profession, right, the sort of what I do for work really is I'm a therapist here in this flat in Harley Street. Like Michael, not to the same, it's interesting, not to the same levels of smuggling or anything, but I grew up in a family, transgenerational influences of crime in Glasgow in the 60s, and then carried on that way, started to commit crime from a young age, from a boy really, stealing and shoplifting really, when I was young, and then eventually into drugs, started to use drugs, and then eventually getting arrested several times, and then getting clean when I was 32 years old. So
what does that mean?
So what it means is, there's two lives. There's two lives.
Yeah.
It means for me there's been two lives. There's been a life of this behaviour which is involved with a group of people where we all talk about, we talk the same language really, so we all have this sort of it's this rhetoric which is all about, oh, you know, he's in prison, he's just been nicked, he's got this, he's got X amount of dough, you know. So there's two different systems. There's one system where I grew up and I fitted in because I craved to be validated and to be liked, and my ego looked to get nurtured and bolstered and thing. And alongside what was happening was I wanted money. I wanted lots of money because I came from a very poor background. So money was the way out. But eventually, at the end of the drug use, it wasn't really about money. I wasn't making much money. It wasn't big deals. It was just literally going from Thailand with heroin back to England with lots of heroin inside my body. So it was just fulfilling the addiction. So it wasn't really to get the money. At the end, it was just basically hand to mouth. It was petty crime, really. For it. I guess that's a good thing that he stopped me, because at one point I'd be thinking, right, okay, if we're bringing cars back from the south of Spain, we're bringing that back into England. But I always thought, oh, it's not enough. I always, like Michael, always thought it's not enough. It never felt enough. So by the end, it was just surviving, really, I think. And then there's a reinvention of myself that happened as a result of getting clean. But I'm still, and we talked about this before before we started, thing is, I'm still the same person as I've always been, really, but I just don't do the behaviour that I used to do. But the thoughts, and sometimes, the thoughts are certainly there, like for shortcuts to so that part of me that went through, because it's quite mad, we go through all these experiences where we get into situations like Michael was talking about that in jail and stuff like that. I remember just being in situations with groups of people, whether it be in a prison or whether it in Spain, in the south of Spain, in Malaga, and I've experienced all these like mad situations, but yet I somehow navigated my way through. But that's part of me, those memories, and it was me that experienced it all. But yet the life that I live now is completely different. It's like it's juxtaposition. It's like it's a complete opposite of what I'm doing, really, because what I'm trying to do on a daily basis is here, when I'm working with clients and stuff on the daily basis, it's like I'm trying to help them recover from their addictions. But actually before, what I was doing was I was giving them the drugs to maintain and to magnify their addictions. So it's like there's two, it's like day and night. It's like, so, and what fed that in me was this sort of ego drive, really, that if I had enough money, if I had this sort of status, then people would like me, or they would look up to me. They would think, and this goes way back. This goes back to the child, really. If I think back, the kid that was jumping off roofs in Glasgow in the backs of the tenement buildings, when initially I would get some validation with people when the other kids would go, Demi, my nickname was Demi when I was a kid, so they would go, Demi, jump from that roof to that roof, and then I'd jump, and they'd all go, fuck it, they would go, they would go, they go, oh, that's magic, they go, that's magic, they go, whoa, and they'd all cheer, and I'd get that high. That was the first high, really, when I look back, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, or whatever I was then, and getting that validation. And really the rest of it was all really chasing that, and trying to get externally that validation outside myself. And I guess now I know now I know years, and it takes a long time, and wisdom comes slow, man, doesn't it? It takes wisdom. I mean, like, I'm 57 years old, and it's taken so many years just to work out how I sort of think and how I react to situations, and also knowing that no matter how much of that stuff I get externally, it's never enough. And I'm talking about the praise or the validation. Whether Michael's talking about 100 tons of cannabis, or I'm talking about 40 kilos, it doesn't really matter. That you can never get enough. And so it's an inside job. The whole thing's an inside job.
But I'd kind of throw back at you that, you know, on an intellectual level, that you can never get enough, right?
Yeah.
But why do you still want it?
Yeah. Why do we still want it? So we're wired. There's something at the core.
I'm talking about you.
Me. Right. Okay. I'll talk about me. So why do I still want it? So right. Very good point. Right. This is the gritty nitty, isn't it? Right. Right. So why do I still want it? Because there's a part. There's a part inside that thinks, if that person, it could be a woman, it could be money, it could be association with a celebrity. Let's talk about association with celebrity. I know quite a lot of celebrities, as you do as well, and a few of us do here, right? So that part that then wants to get, if they like me, and they could have thousands of people, because they've got thousands of people in it that want to be their friend. But if they phone me up or they drop me that text, they've picked me, right, to communicate with, right? So then what it does, that little boy, basically, my little boy inside, it goes, I'm enough because they like me. But then I have to keep on chasing it because my head, I've got a part of me that says, but you're not really enough. They're only texting you because they're struggling or something, and nobody else is available. You know, it'll create another story. So that is that young part of myself, subpersonality, call it a subpersonality, that's always looked for this thing that I'm enough, really.
So, as I'm sitting there listening to you, and I've known you a long time, Mark has also written a couple of books. I really like that, the fact that you've written two. I'm thinking...
We'll get there, Tosca. We'll get there. We'll get there.
What I'm thinking to myself is that, when does that dissipate? It's kind of like... When does that dissipate? When do you work a process? Where you work a process that isn't a fundamental part of you. So it's, if I take my own experience of that, my own experience of that is why, and I really hear you, what you're saying, and I understand celebrity and that sort of stuff, and why I don't go full in, I don't go full in is that my fear of being exposed by said people. My fear of not being it's easier. I find it's like, when I think about myself, I always think of myself as being a number two. I don't want to be a number one. Do you know what I mean? I don't want the responsibility of holding something together, whether that be a relationship, whether that be my work processes, whether the stuff that I do. Like, I do a radio show. I used to do a radio show every week. Now I do 2 a month. Why? Because I don't want it to get any bigger than that. I don't want to deal with the consequences of it being that successful, right? Because if I have to deal with the consequences of that being that, I'll be exposed. Do you know what I mean? You can't really do it. Do you know what I mean? There's something about me that I've kind of accepted. I've kind of accepted. And what I love about getting older is, as you're sitting there talking about that, I'm thinking in 10 years' time, will you still think and feel the same way?
Yeah, yeah.
Will you still think and feel that these...
No, but Tosca, I think what happens, right? I think what happens in this whole journey, the recovery journey, and we're talking recovery in a broader sense, not just recovery around drugs, just recovery as recovering. I always think recovery, what we've lost, what should rightfully be ours. And I mean by that our self-esteem, our sense of dignity. Now, I think what happens is rationally, I mean, there's two bits in it. Rationally, I understand whether Michael says he texts me or Paul's texts me or you text me, you know, it doesn't matter. I can't sort of live vicariously through your affirmation of me, right? I've got to be, you know, I'm my own man, right? You know, I'm my own entity, and my emotional state can't be dependent on whether Michael's no text me or Paul's no text. You know, it's like, I'm just using that as an example, or Russell's no text me, or whoever it is. So I think I know that academically, and also what happens through time, right? It gets reinforced in me that there's another part of me I can see I am enough, right? I really can see I'm enough as an individual, but it's taken a long time for that. And that's when they say the journey from the head. And I think that's the journey from the head to the heart stuff is like academic. I can see, maybe when people were saying it at the beginning of recovery or in the rehab, they were saying, you've got to love yourself, you've got to validate yourself. And people would say, oh yeah, I love myself. But there's no way because the sort of voice of self-loathing was so strong, and it drove me a lot with these behaviours. So I think now I can see it much more, and it's like it's incremental. It's definitely incremental, but that doesn't mean that when I get a text from some celebrity, I don't get that hit. I still get that hit. I still get that, oh, right, he's, I get that, but I know that I'm okay without it. I know I'm completely okay without it.
I'm going to flip the other side of that. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's quite an interesting conversation to have.
Yeah.
So I used to manage Seal. Right? And, and I knew him from Kilburn Lane. And, when I met him, he used to sell ecstasy. He walked around with Crazy, a worldwide smash hit record as a cassette in his pocket for years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he was managed by a guy called Andy Woodford. Nothing really happened for him. And he got really lucky. He sang on this record, Killer by Dempster. But he never had a record deal. He never had a record deal. The other fella, Dempster, had a record deal, and he didn't have one, which is like nuts. He's singing a #1 record, and everyone came in, and they wanted to have it with him, right? Everyone wanted to have it with him. And I can always remember he's got a house on Medina Place. Is it Medina Place? Which is opposite the fire station on the King's Road. Yeah, Chelsea on the King's Road.
Yeah.
And I can always remember, because I don't know what it's like to be a celebrity. You know what I mean? You are kind of like a bit of a celebrity, Mark. Come on, own it. You are a bit of a celebrity. And he sat. We were having dinner one night, and he said, "That bloke over there thinks I'm a dickhead. This bloke thinks I'm this. That bloke thinks I'm that." Right? And he said, look, I'm a funny bloke, right? Yeah. And you're laughing. But what everyone's saying is that they're only laughing because it's me. You know what I mean? They're only laughing because it's me. I'm Seal and I'm funny, right? Which I am. I know that. James, my brother, would say that. My dad would say that. My family would say that my sense of humour kept me out of trouble in Brondesbury Park School when I was 12 and 11. I had scars on my face and people wanted to beat me up, right? Yeah. He said, but here today, we're in this restaurant. Nothing's really changed. My reality, I'm still Seal, right? Yeah. And these people, right? Yeah, are quoting me. Yeah, I can see it. How do you think I feel about that? Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like it's all different. It's all the same. Yeah, and the idea of giving them that much power.
Yeah.
Yeah. giving them that much power about, okay, you know, I know X person, Y person, and Z person, and they're not, they've not rung me back, or, you know what I mean, I'm kind of it's kind of slightly ludicrous, right? And where I got it, right, where I got it is that, and I want to be a number two, I don't want to be anything more than I am, is that when in my relationship with this guy, he's like a real geek, right? Yeah, like he can build a computer, believe it or not. Still can build a computer. And when we got into this relationship of me managing him, broadband and all of that stuff wasn't as prevalent as it is now, and computers. And he came round my house and sorted my broadband out. And he sat there with his little box and doing all this stuff, and you know, and sort of said. And then he turned around to me and said, "You need to change your computer. You need to do this. You need to do that. Blah blah blah. Because you're no good on computers, so you need to have a Mac. A Mac is like computing for simpletons, and all this sort of stuff." And I was talking to someone as an equal. And that's all that we are. Yeah, that's all that we are. And kind of, and taking it on from into the gritty nitty, because really the gritty nitty is, it's the reason it's not called the nitty gritty is that this is one step beyond that. Yeah, it's about drilling down on your vulnerabilities, on the world's vulnerabilities, and how that kind of relates to you. Yeah. And what I hear when I hear that is that we're all stripped naked, right? Yeah, we're all stripped naked, and you know. And you said both you have said really interesting stories about vulnerability and where you're at, and you know. And I can remember being maybe 13 or 14, and and when I grew up. When I grew up, my mum used to beat the hell out of me all the time, and my dad was just to read a newspaper. But Christmas and birthdays, I could get what I wanted. Right? It was the only time, like in our house, Christmas and birthday, you can have what you want. Right? The rest of the time, it was a hard work. Right? So, it's about, you know, I'm 13 or 14, and I want a sheepskin coat. Right now.
I remember the old sheepskins. Wasn't it? Everybody used to, yeah. 80s, wasn't it? Yeah.
It's 70s, right? 70s. So I get this sheepskin coat. Right, and I go to school first day January. So my birthday is on January the 1st. Christmas is 7 days before that. Obviously, we all know that, 25th of December. So I'm loaded up generally around about that time. You know, and respect to my mum and dad for this in particular. It's like, it wasn't like they ever said to me, "Oh, it's too near Christmas. You know, here's a packet of jelly babies." You know what I mean? They worked it out that I got what I wanted on those days. So I went back to school in this coat. And I walked across a muddy field and fell over. So now I know I'm in trouble, right? Yeah, I'm in trouble. But someone seen me fall over, and it was near like the football pitch in our school. And before I know it, someone's firing a ball at me, and I'm like diving in the sheepskin coat, right? Yeah. And they're going, "Oh, Tosca's mad. He's got his new coat on, and he's diving around in the mud, right?" So now I've got like a group of kids all firing the ball, but because I can't sort of back down. I'm now diving around in my brand new coat. Yeah. And every dive, there's a tear in my eye. Oh. Do you know what I mean? Like knowing what, like, and I don't know why I'm doing it. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm just like, what is going on? You know what I mean? Like I'm literally saying to myself, what is wrong with you?
That's a lovely.
That's a great. Listen.
You know, what is wrong with you? Do you know what I mean? So now. It's not, school's not even started. And I've got this brand new sheepskin covered in mud. Covered in mud.
What was the consequence?
Well, the consequence was this is a good part of the story, is that I went home, hid the coat in the wardrobe. About 4 or 5 days later, I got like a brush and it all came out.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but I've always taken back to that juxtaposition of where I was. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And how I can take myself to that place any single day of the week. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And
absolutely.
It's kind of, it's a contradiction, isn't it? It's contradict the duality inside.
And, you know, and what, you know, and if recovery is being lost and then found, which I kind of tend to think that it is is I have to work out how not to put myself in those positions.
It's very true.
Yeah, and do you know, just
That's
on,
very true, Tosca.
and
Very true.
And do you know, on that thing what you're talking about Seal, I remember going to meet Eric Clapton for some noodles one. This is like, I'd met him a long time ago, and then when I first got clean, and then he was like part sponsoring me for a while in the programme, and I was meeting him for
What
noodles.
does that mean?
Part sponsoring, just like I was meeting him, and we were going through a sort of.
So it's like a mentor tour.
Yeah, when I broke up, it's no long ago. It was only a couple of years ago, and before the pandemic, and he was like a mentor. He was like, I was going through some steps stuff with him, and it was steps?
Sorry, I have to keep interrupting you.
Steps of 12 steps in Narcotics Anonymous, and he was going to the meetings, and I just came out, and the steps are like a spiritual, like Michael was talking about, it's a spiritual programme. We'll go probably more into depth with it sometime, I'm sure, on this. But basically, a mentor, a sponsor sort of takes you through the 12 steps, and because they've done them, they've actually wrote them out, or they've went through them. And they're like just like a mentor. And at that time, I just broke up with my ex-wife, and I was in a lot of pain. And he said to me, he says, "Listen, man, this is what you should do." I mean, I was speaking to Paul around the same time. I was speaking to a lot of friends, but he said to me, "This is what you need to do." Now, this day when I was going to see him to have noodles with him, I remember thinking to myself, this is mad, this is surreal, really. I've got a picture of this guy, poster when I was a kid, on my wall, and I'm going to sit there and have noodles with him, and not just that we're going to go to a Hot Wind concert, he's going to take, it's mad, and then my head says, well, what you've got to do is you've got to get him to really like you, you've got to tell him some of these stories, so I mean, stories, and real stories that I've done, right, and stuff that's happened to me, but there was this part of me, like, and it's back to that, it's you with the sheepskin coats, it's that, and I thought, you've just got to, I was driving along my motorbike, and I just thought, really what you've got to do, you've just got to be exactly who you are, and like, you don't have to impress, you don't have to, if you start, and especially if you start lying and making stuff up, you know what I mean, which I can do easily, I could magnify and exaggerate and, be dishonest, so, and there was something about just be yourself, and then whatever happens, you're being authentic, you're being real to yourself, because you can't, and so there's a freedom within that as well. Yeah. What I'm trying to say is that's what I've got to try and be in, like, because in the using game, I'd go into rooms and there'd be different people that I'd have different relationships, and I was a complete chameleon. So if Michael and Paul, I might present, this was what it was like, I might present a different version of myself to Michael than I would to Paul. So it'd get really confusing if the two of them were coming here at the same time, because I wouldn't know how to project my ego to, so I think that's been really important. That, like, trying to sort of just practice, it's a humility, really, I think.
That's what it is. It's
humility, isn't it?
Okay, fantastic. So obviously you've written a couple of books. Otherwise you wouldn't be sitting on that sofa.
So one's called Nothing. The first one's called Nothing to Declare: Confessions of an Unsuccessful Drug Smuggler. And that's it. I changed the title, the second bit of it, just recently when I got the next print done. And the second one's The Ongoing Path. Okay,
fantastic. I really enjoyed that. Moving swiftly on and sitting opposite me, we have young Paul Ferris, and you're looking rather snatty with the hat again. It's becoming a look for you. Paul, what's it all about?
Well, what's it all about? Let me start with the hat. I suffer from psoriasis. I've had suffered for many, many years, and it came on through severe bullying in Scotland at primary school, where there was a group of older brothers that was maybe aged from about 10 years of age up to about young men at 30 years of age. So you fight one, you fight them all. Was never involved in any violence as such, but it happened over a game of marbles, an innocuous game of marbles, where we played on this drainage thing that had the holes on it, and there was one particular marble had a green flash through it.
I like a green flash.
Because I was brought up supporting the local football team, which was Celtic. I was want to win this marble, but in order to get a visual aspect to it, is the two people who are engaging in the game are on their knees, and then there's a crowd that gathers round about and looks over it. And one of these brothers accidentally gets pushed in to the crowd, and as he falls over, he grabs the prizes without winning. Grabs them, he just stole them. And this particular time, I decided, no, you need to give that back, because I was playing, I was 1-1. So I got to a stage where I took it off him. He's went away and spoke to other members of the family, and I can always remember this feeling that I got in the back of my throat. Bearing in mind, I'm kneeling down, playing the game, and you could just sense something is coming at you fast. And before you realise that, I get what you would call a penalty kick right in the face that either spun me over or I fell over. But instantly I felt this acidic thing at the back of my throat. When you talk to boxers can tell you exactly what that is. I don't know what, it's a fluid that comes behind your nasal passage. I never get knocked out, but I was severely wounded. And I remember lying on my back, trying to defend, feet stamped on your face and different things like that. So that was a catalyst for me. I was always picked on at that particular time. I'm not playing any violin or looking for tissues. It's a fact of life of what happened. And recently I was asked to express fight or flight. And it was Professor David Wilson who was doing his crime files. And we spoke off camera regarding it, and it triggered something in me that it's not just about running away or fighting. There was a middle ground that happened with me that I'd run away that much through fear. And people talk about fear, and unless you experience that element of fear, you don't even know what fear is. So the fear of running away is the flight. But the consequences of running away during that flight is you get caught. Maybe not that day, but you've got to return back to school, and then you get punched dead. The violence that was towards me, there was never any broken bones. There was a broken spirit. There was a broken thing in which I had no male members in the family at that time. My brother was serving life in prison. My dad was in prison for a bank robbery. Told my mum multiple lies about how my clothes were damaged, black eyes, fell downstairs, upstairs, into pool. Loads of nonsense, really. Just to prevent and maintain what my dad's discipline was, never tell tales. And so that was the whole aspect. So I built all these things up, and it happened for quite a number of years. And then I was explaining the process of getting up in the morning and going to school. My mum, she was a domestic cleaner in the Royal Infirmary, local infirmary. So I used to walk her run and get a bus, and then count my steps towards a main road where the traffic lights were there and the green man comes on, and you walk to school. I timed it to such an extent the bell would ring as I'm just about to cross the road. You go and stand in line, and then you get absorbed in your schoolwork when you get into the class, and then the next bell it rings is the fear. Egging back into the playground for school meals. Fortunately for me, I went to my gran's, and for some reason or another, I associated toast and beans with the loss of my dad. My dad had two coaches. He would always take the football supporters away, weddings, and we're always kind of well off in an impoverished area. But I soon realised that my loss of my father encouraged more toast and beans. It was just one of these things I picked up on. And then over a period of time, we came back into a situation in which when you start to feel these things that are normal, you run away, knowing that you can't fight 2 or 3 of them. Running away purely because you don't like violence anyway, you don't like pain. The fighting aspect was never a choice, because there was, if you beat one, then it's like
Keep going. For the purpose of the film, I'm just going to the bathroom.
But I hope you don't mind, but I need to use the wee as well. So
all right.
Okay.
No, keep going. Keep going.
Okay, right, let's right.
Paul, that was a
I'm wonderful.
wonderful explanation.
Pause that and then we'll come straight back to it.
That was wonderful.
I just was listening so intently.
And I'll tell you why.
How old were you when your dad went away?
My dad went to prison when I was about 7. He'd been away for a couple of years, so by the time I was to finish primary school, to get into secondary school, my dad had just come back, but there was an issue that happened, a major issue that happened before my dad was actually freed from prison. This bullying thing had been going on for quite a number of years, and it got to an extent where I broke out in psoriasis, hence the hat. Sometimes I've got to put creams on, it looks unkempt, and so it's not for a disguise, but it's handy for a disguise, but it's not used for a disguise, it's a medicinal purpose. Makes me feel better, makes me feel I look a bit better. But the whole aspect of it was I popped out in all these red sores, and because we lived in a deprived area, mistakenly people thought it's scabies or it's an infectious disease. I don't know what it was. It just mum took us to the doctor, and then it transpired that psoriasis is usually hereditary through your mum's side, your dad's side, or whatever it is. And it went all the way back to great grandfathers and great grandmothers, and nobody's ever had that. So it became a bit of an anomaly. And then just on the basis of the fight or flight scenario we were talking about, I'd done an interview, as I said, with Professor David Wilson, and off camera we spoke regarding some of the issues, and I felt that because he asked a relevant question off camera, I had to go a bit more in depth when we went live, and the analysis that I gave him back, bearing in mind he's a professional psychologist dealing with a live person talking about fight or flight, so my understanding of what I went through was the running away equated to more violence because you ran away, but you had to turn up at school, you had to walk to the steps, you had the comfort zone. And then something else is mentioned about the Pavlovian theory, about the bell and the dog and the food. That bell was the school bell, and for me it was repeating every day. Maybe the bullying never happened every day, but the cause of the bell and the fear reacted every day. So I ended up explaining about how running away and getting caught was far more violent, and then standing there and accepting the violence without running away and without fighting became a grey area, because it's such where there's no fight or flight. It's a grey area that's probably not been identified as much, but it's something in which I felt I could switch off to the pain. The violence as such, it's not your knees are getting broke, your body's getting beat up, you know, there's loads of bruises or loads of pain there, but you can switch off. I found the nature, I switched off for the impact. The violence might have only been a minute, 2 minutes, maybe a bit longer, but I never showed the fear, I never showed the pain, and I never cried until I walked away to go to my grand's to get my lunch. And then I would curse and bawl. Then I would get angry. Then I would cry, and then I'd feel the pain. And then it would be something which building up a really bad feeling that I had, that I know one day I'm going to turn the tables, but I don't know how I'm going to turn the tables, but I've just got to accept it for now and get on with it. Got to a stage where the psoriasis just really went rampant, and more importantly, it was a transitional period as going from primary school into your secondary school, where all these brothers were supposed to be going to be, so you'd be there with maybe 3 or 4 older ones, and it's going to just make your whole life fucking terrible. Beep, sorry for that. But it gets to a stage where I was hospitalised, not for any violence. I was took and I ended up with 95% body mass, psoriasis, and watching some of the movies about Arabia and the mummies and the Egyptians, and I ended up on that. The only place he was never affected was my face, my genitals and my hands and my feet. But I used to stand naked for the nurses, and it smelled like tar off the roadworks, and they put it on a spatula, and then they put powder on it, you get wrapped up like a mummy. But basically what they're doing is they're treating the dryness of the skin. Psoriasis is a form in which there's a toxin through fear, anxiety, stress that the body needs to expel for the system. And the only way it can leave your system is up through your sweat glands. But when it does that, it triggers a false repair program for your skin that grows 100 times faster than normal. So therefore it uses up all the natural oils that you've got, hence why they put creams and lotions on it to prevent that. To me, it's a secondary condition. Primary condition is to make sure that you get a mental fluid, that you don't get stress, you don't get anxious. So there's a psychological aspect, what I think is the primary position, because without that psychological feeling, you would never get the toxins to get in your system to turn into psoriasis. So that's a kind of personal view, somebody who's suffered with psoriasis for many years. The cause of it was never relevant until I had spent numerous amount of years in hospital, through prison hospitals, outside hospitals, and it became apparent when I was 15. I became subject matter for students and the toxicology department, purely on the basis that they needed answers. And I remember one day in bed, they pulled the curtains round, and there's about 6 or 7 students, but this main doctor, my professor, had a clipboard, and their view on my psoriasis and my well-being could have be a cause of how your parents are treating you. You're getting physically abused in the house. So when he reached that particular question, my dad was in prison, so that was negated. And then it came to other siblings, family members, and that. And then when it came down to why I ended up in hospital in the first place, and what I think what the cause of it was, and I could only give the story about the fear. You're going from one school to another. And that's when they all looked at each other, and that's when I realised, I've had this psoriasis, not being able to wear a t-shirt. Used to love going in, I was a goalkeeper because you could wear a tracksuit, and I loved it, but couldn't get into the showers for personal reasons, purely on the basis there's a lot of people who never knew what psoriasis is, and the worst thing about it was, can you catch that? You know, just not the ignorance, it's probably if I never had psoriasis and seen it, it's a relevant question, but for somebody as a sufferer, it's a hard thing to take, so you're always self-conscious. So that followed me all through my life, and we'll go back to the hat again. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't. But the psoriasis and the aspect of finding out through professionals in that field, in the dermatology unit, was my focus went right back onto the people who bullied me at school and robbed me in my childhood. To wear a t-shirt, normal t-shirt in summer, shorts, nothing. I never had the confidence to do that because of the volume and body mass. And I remembered walking back up for school and the crying, not a crying as in loads of tears and things like that, but it was an angry position where I go, well, this passion was there. There was some activated inside me that was an angry person. And when the doctors identified that's what the cause of it was, a switch flipped in my head for revenge, and that's what I done. I got involved in the violence towards a group of people in an area where it was steeped in crime, this particular area in Black Hill and Proven Mill, and the family who I ended up having some forms of retribution towards. Early in the 60s, there was a gang war going on between well-renowned people. One of the family was head of, his name was Arthur Thompson, and the other ones were the Welsh family who inflicted this younger generation of the Welshes that had inflicted the bullying aspect on me at school. So when I got certain parts of revenge, I'm not going into the revenge unless you want me, but it was physical. It was something in which I was devoid of any compassion. I would still say that now, without being a hypocrite. I enjoyed it. It was something in which people might be horrified and saying, well, you still got that mentality even years later. Bullying lasts a lifetime. How can revenge not last a lifetime? But I wouldn't do it now. If I've got enough strength to see these people, would I walk past them? Probably, depending on the circumstances. It's deep-rooted. It's something in which I can recognise when did I step off the path? Right then. So it's all about how can you re-engage in it? How can you detoxify yourself for this venomous hatred? How do you put the switch off? How can you control it? And how I learned to control it was being aware that was when I became stressful or I became forms of tension or anxiety, maybe 3 weeks later, these spots would start to appear. Pop, pop, pop. So I learned to maintain a discipline in the mind, not to get over anxious, not to get under anxious, just to keep that walking on that tightrope. And after a period of years, it becomes normal. And people think that you're devoid of fear. You're not, you're just, the fear has gone. The fear had been shook out of you that much that when people talk about fear, when you get something, whether it was on a daily basis with the bell, whether it was on a weekly basis with physical violence, there's something in which that you become resistant to. And I've repeated this conversation. It was a friend of mine, world champion boxer, Alex Arthur. I was watching his interview with interest. And the interviewer asked Alex, what was the first time you felt when you got a punch right in the nose? What was it like? And when he was explaining it, he mentioned how it tasted, and then how did they succumb to the boxing aspect of it. And he used the phrase that it became punch resistant. And I thought, punch resistant, repeated use of violence, you can become fear resistant. What happened to me through accident? People think that I'm callous, I've not got any particular nerves. That is because a lifetime of having to suppress anxiety in order to communicate clearly and precise about it, because there may be other people there sitting in silence that don't know how to do it, they don't know how to navigate their life, they don't know how to understand it. Don't need to read it out the books. There's parts of everybody's journey here, and that's where we get to the gritty nitty on everybody's story. Some's greater than others, and we use the analogy like a mad scientist will put all our feelings into this. Will it represent a true and accurate roadmap for other people to use to benefit their well-being? Might be a younger generation, but it's always a case, irrespective of who's in this room, you need to respect a source before you even accept advice. And 9 times out of 10, it's not your parents. We never done it. Don't do this, there's more chance you doing it.
You said something really fascinating there. Well, you said a couple of things, really. The first bit that you said was that bullying lasts forever.
It does.
Yeah?
It does.
So why shouldn't revenge?
Yeah.
Yeah? So, and then that leads into the fact that you have no fear.
I have got fear, but I suppress it. I don't really show it. It's just been years. Nobody's devoid of fear. Okay. I'm just saying that if you're a boxer and you get punched in the nose for 12 rounds every weekend, then if somebody gives you one in the pub,
so you learn to live. So you learn to live with it.
Learn to live with it.
Okay, are you proud of that?
It's a consequence of growing up. It's a byproduct to. If I never controlled it, I would probably be in hospitals dealing with other issues of health that affects through stress or whatever it is. So I've maintained it on the basis, and I had to maintain it purely for my own benefit.
Through necessity.
To stop psoriasis. And anybody who's studied it will see that there's probably maybe in between a 2-week or a 4-week gap for when you've had an impact, that this toxin comes into your system, and it takes that amount of time before it goes out. And you see these red spots. Where did they come from? It's not hereditary. My family never had it. It's to do with a trigger mechanism in my own biology that creates that. So after a while, you think, well, I ain't going to get like that. I'm going to maintain a psychological discipline. I'm not going to get upset. I'm not going to get anxious. So the byproduct, has it helped me? It has. It's helped me to be in a position in which I can clearly describe events for the past. And in any other forms of negotiations, I can have a balanced and well-informed debate to describe exactly what that journey is. And it might even be helpful somewhere down the line for other people. I don't date to help the other people, I date to explain my journey. And if the byproduct, again, it helps other people, might not be for psoriasis, might not be for anything else other than a well-being, that somebody says, I never seen this in the brochures. I've never seen it in any academia. I've never been taught that. It's a life skill that when we get to the gritty nitty about our educational platform, why are we here discussing things? Because other people think it might be relevant to use further down the line as either educational or as a way to describe somebody's life, somebody's journey. It's only my life and my journey. And it's something which we're fully aware of the consequences.
I love that. I have to say, I love the idea of this is who I am, and this is what I need to do to contend with what it is to be me. You know, which is, it's very profound. It's very profound. It's, you know, and it's with discipline, you know, and it's with understanding, and it's like it's a spiritual practice. It's
there is an element of spirituality in it. As Michael said in his own opening, but he's non-religious, but he's spiritual. I've had a few spiritual experiences in my life, not as many as what you probably want, but it's been brought up in an environment where my dad was a Protestant, my mum was a Catholic, and it was probably a bit of a taboo way back in the day. But my dad was never a practicing Protestant. My mum was a practicing Catholic, you know, and I used to get money to go to the chapel to put in the plate after the sermon. The problem with that is it was up near the school where the bullying was happening. So I used to skip going to chapel, use the money and go and buy cigarettes or sweets, get my friend that used to go religiously, no pun intended, to chapel. And he'd come down and I would ask him, who was the priest, Father Gallica? What was the service? And he gave me the sheet. So by the time I get back to my mum, who was the priest, Father Gallica? What was the sermon? There it's there. And the next step on that aspect would be, if my mum's running late, I would need to leave the house in order to get to my grand's. And again, my preference was bypassing a street corner where there was a group of people who would probably have a go at me. The same bullying things that happened in the school. And I would walk through the graveyard, believe it or not, to get to my grand's at a very early age. And I thought for some reason, and the first dead person I ever came across was my granddad. And again, the comfort of walking through the graveyard was a shortcut. My granddad was my best friend and mentor when I was younger, growing up. My dad was in prison, so he looked after me, let me do a lot of things in his allotment, and grew his car. Proper old Second World War guy, grew all his own stuff. And he disappeared for a while in my vision because he went in hospital. Coming from a big Catholic family, the McGinty family, it was a tradition for any Catholic family to tell you that to have the body in situ in the house for family members to come and pay their respects before they eventually get buried. And I remember a particular view of the coffin because it was eye level to me in my recollection, and I was lifted up to kiss my granddad's forehead. And when I looked in, it wasn't my granddad. It was my granddad, but no, what I remember And sometimes I've learnt that lesson through life, that maybe it's just as well to hold on to the memories that you've got of somebody, rather than having to look at somebody who you don't recognise that is supposed to be who it is. So death, to me, was a big impact element. And even that morning, I remember waking up as a kid, thinking I'm going to die. Everybody dies. Never knew that at the time. So walking through the graveyard, people have got an inner voice, they've got a reading voice. And to me, it was a spiritual guidance. Be saying, you can have safe passage walking through here, as long as you don't do any vandalism. The people in here are dead, they don't do you any harm. You shouldn't do them any harm either. And we understand why you're taking this path, through fear. Because you can't face the living, but you can walk with the dead. That was something. And then to walk through that passageway, to be secure in my grands and get my toast and beans, and then walk back and pitch dark with absolutely no fear whatsoever, was something which held me for other forms of heartache further down the line. You know, that's the biggest impact you probably have in your life. One of your family members dying or passing away. Hospitals. And then that just takes you on a different journey where your violence turns into something else, and it came to a relevant point where the violence that I meted out towards the bullies was noted by the main guys who were running the whole area, the Thompson crews, Arthur Thompson Sr., Arthur Thompson Jr. And just to give the audience a bit of background, this same family who'd been bullying me, their uncles had planted a bomb underneath Arthur Thompson's car, but they planted it underneath the passenger seat, because he always had a driver. And a particular unfortunate chain of events took place where the driver never turned up, and Arthur Thompson Sr. had to drive his mother-in-law and take her home in the passenger seat. The minute he tried to take a corner, boom, his mother-in-law was killed. He suffered a lot of fatalities, and I was probably about 3 or 4 at the time. But he had grown up into this history about the war that's taking place. And before the bomb, there was 2 people who were killed in a road crash that Thompson had allegedly rammed off the road and killed. It's well documented, it's in books. So that's the history where I've been brought into. And because I was never involved in any of the gangs, any of the crews. I was just somebody doing my own journey and paying a bit of redemption for me, and maybe a bit of too much revenge and not much redemption. So it came to the attention of these people that I was doing this to their enemy, and I was welcomed in, because my enemy's their enemy's my enemy, sort of thing. And probably one of the worst mistakes I've ever made. I laugh now, but I shouldn't be laughing. But you're misguided enough that you think you've seen all these movies, you're working with these people, you'll do so much, you'll be welcomed in, and you'll be part of that firm. The reality is that you're just given a shopping list to go and do all the dirty work, and then get kicked in the beep bollocks further down the line. And it's something which, growing up, I probably missed. Like hero figures. My dad's my ultimate hero, my brother's my hero, but they weren't there for me when I needed it. And so you kind of adapt to uncles or friends or whatever's going on. And the invite to come and join them when I'm, 16, 17 years of age, it was tempting. It was all about the money and the violence. So I ended up on a journey for the best part of 20 years. In and out of young offenders institutions, in and out of Scottish prisons, and then ended up in and out of a variety of English prisons. And I called it a day. People ask, when did I call it a day? I called it a day, funny enough, when I was sitting in Belmarsh, looking through defence productions as well as Crown productions, and I came across a lot of security services, MI5 surveillance photographs. And it just dawned on me that you come to the attention to these people, you're on their radar, you're either giving it up and walking away, or you're going away for another stretch. So I decided that I was giving up crime in probably 1998, before the trial. 1999, the conviction, through all the rest of it. So by the time my freedom came, when I never got parole, still released on category A from Franklin Prison on the 21st of January 2002, there was a group of reporters waiting, because I wrote a book for that time with my social worker, Reg Mackay. And
What was the book called?
The Ferris Conspiracy.
Okay. Can we buy it?
Yeah, you can buy it online. It's been out. It's 20 years old. Still to be revised. I'm working on other projects just now. There's been other books regarding it, but this particular one, my social worker, or probation officer, ex-probation officer, picked me up when I get released, and there was a gallon of news reporters that wanted to interview me on the basis of the book and the notoriety, the MI5, the security services arrest, because apparently it was the first time in the UK that the security services were involved in a criminal investigation and a trial. The only thing I had to ask the reporters was, I thanked everybody who stood by me during my prison time. I paid homage to Reg Mackay for getting the book out of me and then in print. And the obvious thing about making a full declaration that I'm going straight, I'm moving away from crime and hopefully engaging in other businesses, which I did do. And there was a few laughs. Even I, at that stage, wasn't laughing at myself, but I'd understood why other people were laughing. And then the old phrase comes out, a leopard never changes its spots, which that's probably true, but I ain't a leopard. So maybe change what? Yeah, maybe change my own spots, as Mr. I says. That's about it. So he's now got the brains enough to go straight. He's always, so you get a whole avalanche of negativity. But what I found strange was the judiciary, the evidence gatherers, including security services, done their job. There was never any complaints. It was a straight, genuine trial. Goes towards a jury to find you guilt or innocent. They found his guilt. The judge then's got a mandate towards a sentencing guideline, how much a sentence that he's going to give you. And initially I get 45 years.
Wow.
I get 15 years and 10 years. And I thought the substantive sentence would have been 10 years. And there was a kind of a gap towards, I ain't going to stand out shouting ball. You know, it's just...
What was the offence?
The offence was the possession of firearms with intent to sell or transfer, which were 3 Mac 10 submachine guns, 1,000 rounds of subsonic ammunition, and detonators explosives. So the substantive charge would have been, because it's a conspiracy to sell or transfer, the maximum is 10. I did budget for getting the maximum anyway. I was never getting any favours because of historical stuff that's took place. And I remember looking up to the gallery and seeing my sister and my partner at the time, and I thought, when I got 15 and 10, I thought, I'm 5 years out somewhere. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. And I kind of muddied my head a bit into it. I was only took downstairs, the first flight of stairs, and I heard a familiar voice, and it was my barrister at the time, asking for me to come back up. And then the prosecution bring him back up, and I thought, all right, maybe I'm not going to get 5 years out, maybe it's a life sentence I'm going to get here for whatever reason. And I was took back up, and your hearing becomes very acute towards the language that's getting used, all the case, legal language. But apparently what had happened was the judge had exceeded his powers of sentencing. The prosecution failed to tell the judge about the sentencing guidelines because the prosecution automatically thought the judge would have known. The only person that never knew was the judge, that my barrister brought to the attention of the court. It was also brought to the attention of the prosecution. He just told me to stand back up again. And he sentenced me to 35 years. Oh, sorry, 25 years. 10 year, and 5. And that's when I said thank you. But you get court reporters, next day it's a front page, Ferris thanked the judge for his sentence. No, I thanked him for, it looks as though I was arrogant, being sentenced, and I did genuinely thank him for putting it right. Because it meant when I went back down the stairs, I was realigned back. I'm 5 year on that programme now. Knowing I'm not getting any parole, done all the courses in prison, wrote a book in prison, The Ferris Conspiracy, as I said. Probably, to me, I needed it at that time, being honest about it. Moving away from crime and engaging in other mindful developments was that. The ridicule of what I said when I was freed on the first day. Leopard never exchanged its thoughts. He's not got the brains to do this. So on January the 21st next year, there'll be no leopards. There'll be a proof where somebody's had a cognitive enough awareness to move a different path. And it gives me a kind of equilibrium between all the years I've spent in prison towards all the years I've been out now. I've kind of lost a lot in my youth. Self-explanatory, and it's mostly all my own deeds that made me there. So I'm using my own deeds to even that up, to find on a level playing field that I'm using it as a positive example, because the prisons, the young offenders, the adult prisons throughout the whole UK has become something to me of a university of life in itself. You don't get diplomas, you don't get accreditations, but I think in partnership with people who have got the accreditations and got the skills, it could be a fusion somewhere done, that somebody's travelled the path, done the journey, equal to somebody who's read the brochure and wants to go on the journey. I'm open to offers, and it's not financial. It's something in which I'm actually working on a programme just now called Street Pulse Group, and that in itself is putting towards educational formats for reoffenders, people who've got mental health issues, substance abuse issues. Mark's put himself forward as been a substance abuse counsellor for the group, but there is an obvious thing, massive funding. It's something which it could go and be franchised throughout the UK, but we're starting in Stoke-on-Trent with the founder, the co-founder. It's still embryonic as yet, but we have got a mission statement and we've got a business plan. And my position currently just now is I'm a senior consultant, independent for the group.
What's the mission statement? The
mission statement is to identify what the group is, where their core audience is, who they try to help. Again, through initiatives that has been done in the past with a really good friend of mine. People will know who he is, Bobby Cummins. He got an OBE for his work and Unlock the charity. And we were due to set up one in Scotland called the Diamond Project, and then the other project that we were working on was the Redemption Project. A lot of people raised their eyebrows at that because it was a bit evangelical. The Christians and the other people in the church or and the chapels were really not too impressed with the usage of the word, so we kind of had to change it about a bit. So the mission statement, what I've learnt from Bobby Cummins, is on the basis that there's a vulnerable group of people that need that help, but the minute you take government money, you better be dancing to their tune or they stop it. So we're looking at external investors that want to offset tax positions on the basis that they can advance a bit more on what they're doing. And there's
anybody that listening to this that might want to make a contribution, where would they go?
It will come further down the line, but what's got to be established first is the credibility. The credibility of the senior panel or the senior group. And then there's a main committee.
You've got loads of credibility.
Well, there's a main committee and there's a subcommittee. So what you've got there is a main committee will be in charge of all the finance, probably about 6 or 7 different people. The funding aspect, there will be elements where I'll be doing live Q&As, talking about the books, talking about different things. There might be an after dinner thing where you get, after the Q&A, you go and get your dinner. They pay for the meal on the tables. It generates a revenue. Interviews, external interviews, don't pay me, just have a contribution towards the Street Pulse group. And other things, we're going to get a clothing brand done as well, purely on the basis.
So you're really
So
going for it.
It's a passion. It's something which I've always believed that if you lose the passion to get involved in something, you're not happy with doing what you're doing, I try and change it. And the minute you find that you're reaching into other things, not for any glorification or making you out something that you're not, it's because I want to do it. I've been asked to get involved in it. I've never been pushed to get involved in it. It's like being asked to come on, gritty nitty, explain it. Be involved in it. I'm a team player. I used to be a solo player for many years till I found out it's strength in numbers, but not necessary on the violence side of it in the past. But constructively going through business, I'm open to suggestions. If it creates a revenue that goes to the Street Pulse group, then I'm in. The same way, hoping to commercialise gritty nitty. Where do we go here? Because there's expenditure that's going to get done for you guys, camera crews, editing, all these sort of things. So there might be some fusion somewhere down the line.
Well, let's hope that there is. So I've become aware of the time, and there's 3 old gentlemen here, and I'm sure that
not including yourself, Tosca.
Not including myself.
Of course.
Yeah, the young
buck.
good-looking one. Just before we wrap up with Paul, I know that there's a film as well as a book. Can we see the film anywhere? Is that available?
The film was released by Cannabis International in 2013. I had been involved prior to the filming with Ray Burdis, the main director, that had his own set. And the irony was they would never been allowed to film in Scotland because of the political nature of the police corruption and violence and other things. So it was actually filmed in it's 2 Mill Studio, just up near the Thames, I think it was. I was on set quite a few days, met all the cast and crew, done a fantastic job.
Actually, I did a cameo in that studio.
Sorry?
On a programme called Dream Team.
Well,
it's in Stratford.
It is, and I tell you what's in there. They've got a purpose-built jail that was used for bad girls, and it showed some of the prison stories that was mentioned in the book that was now in the film. And I was actually on set one time and I saw a ceramic mug, and I had to say to the producer, "You need to move the mug off screen." Why is that? I said, "You only get plastic in there." Oh, why? I said, "Because the smash on it's going in somebody's face, isn't it?" Yeah. So it's just small things. I was never too involved in the film. It was called The Wee Man, and it got released in 2013, and it won 2 awards, 2 BAFTAs. It won the first BAFTA for the youngest youngest British actor, Daniel Kerr, who played me as a young kid. And then the other BAFTA it won was the Audience Award, which was ironic, well intended, but the irony is the Strathclyde Police and the media mouthpieces, the Daily Record, Sunday Mail, whatever avenues they use, don't watch this movie. They did. And we were up against quite a high calibre opposition. Les Miserables and Danjo Unchained. Les Miserables was first, Wee Man was second, and we beat Danjo Unchained, which is a fantastic movie. I love the movie.
Absolutely.
So the calibre there was the audience spoke. We never spoke. The audience spoke, and then another irony was that when they were intending to do the red carpet for the awards, there was a spurious message sent to me that I'll not be welcome to walk on the red carpet. And I was never going anywhere. I'm not interested in the publicity. It's for the actors. It's their awards. I'm not an actor. I'm just part of subject matter. But the caveat that they used is he won't be able to go on the red carpet, but he can use the side door if he wants. And I thought, cheeky beep. So I thought, better off, I'll get them at the after party, let them have the accolades. So Ray Burdis and Daniel Kerr walked away with 2 of the BAFTAs,
Fantastic.
which is great.
Great, man.
Martin Compton's went on from strength to strength. We're intending to do it's not a sequel, but another movie. But unfortunately, Martin Compton has moved on to bigger and better things. He's now involved in BBC pilot series, 6 different series.
And Line of Duty, of course.
Line of Duty was his first one, and Virgil, the submarine based on the nuclear protesters. He's got a few other ones that's coming out, so he's entrenched himself.
So Martin actually played you.
Martin actually played me as me, done a fantastic job on it. He did ask, it was just normal thing that actors would ask if they could probably get access to source material, who it is, mannerisms and different things like that. So he did pull a lot of things off that were bang on. Reg, probably at 80% truth. And like most movies, nothing's 100%. There is a bit of artistic licence.
Fantastic. So I've been Tosca Jackson, which is my name. He's been Mark Dempster. Don't forget 2 books from Mark. We've got Paul Ferris here, a book and a film, and
5
bringing
books.
up the rear.
5 books. He's got 5 books.
That's 5 books.
5 books.
5 books. Can you let the people out there in podcast land know what your books are?
And list of chronology, and first one is the Ferris Conspiracy that was published in 2001.
Okay.
The next one was Deadly Divisions, a first attempt at a novel. I was in early 2001, 2002. And then we'll get Vendetta, Turning Your Back on Crime Could Be Deadly, which was in 2004, 2005. And then we'll get Villains, Takes One to Know One, between 2005, 2006. And the reason why there's a void is my literary partner, Reg Mackay, had sadly passed away. Cancer got him, but he had a fight. And the last book that I'd done was a tribute to Reg, because I was asked if I wanted to do another book. I refused politely, but a tribute book was totally different. So the last book that I'd done was published 2019. It's called Unfinished Business, Putting the Conspiracy to Rest, which dovetails the original book. And the reason why it was called the Ferris Conspiracy, because it was my conspiracy against elements of the judiciary, the Crown, and the police in Scotland. And they've never been challenged for any of the content through corruption, malpractice, and wrongful arrest. So it's been a bit of a fight, and it's something which there is a few other docudramas that are going to be based on some parts of the book. So they're easily available online, but some are out of print. But I'm going to look at updating most of them in conjunction with writing a new one about the journey on the 20-year from 2001 to 2002 to 2022. That will be called Unfinished Business, the business years, but it hasn't been completed yet. It's a work in progress.
Brilliant. And bringing up the rear, last but definitely not least, to my left, Mr. Michael Emmett. We've been Gritty Nitty. I hope we've got to the source, because that's what we really need to get to. We need to get to the source. We need to drill down, and we need to, be bright and honest, and we need to be congruent. We need to, in this space, own what it is that we are. And if you want to engage, there's Gritty Nitty online. There's the Gritty Nitty app. There's just Gritty Nitty, and we'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tosca.
Thanks, Tosca.
Right.